Good afternoon to all. This is Himanshu Raut, Secretary of Odisha Economic Association. So this is the 57th Foundation Day celebration of Odisha Economic Association, and on this occasion, I invite Professor Jagannath Lenka, President of Odisha Economic Association, to preside over the meeting. And I welcome all the members, executive members, our speaker, today is the chief guest and chief speaker, Professor Sachin Chaturvedi. And I welcome all the members of Odisha Economic Association and the public also, those who are research scholars, students, faculty members all over the country, those who are present in this meet. And first, let me speak something about Professor Chaturvedi, who is currently the Director General at the Research and Information System for Developing Countries, which is a New Delhi-based think tank. I think all of you know it. Professor Chaturvedi works on issues related to development economics involving development finance, SDGs, and South-South cooperation, apart from trade, investment, and innovation linkages with special focus on WTO. Professor Chaturvedi has persistently endeavored to build up institutions and launching networks, both at national and international levels. He is credited with the launch of Network of Southern Think Tanks and Forum for Indian Development Cooperation, FIDC. He has also created Delhi Process, a major forum for exchange of ideas on South-South and triangular cooperation. Professor Chaturvedi has been part of several important initiatives of the Government of India and takes keen interest in transforming economic policymaking towards integrated and evidence-based approaches. He is one of the foremost commentator of India's external sector economic engagements and partnerships. He is considered as most dynamic and affable by his peers and has mentored several bright scholars and researchers in the profession. He has authored, edited more than 22 books, apart from contributing several chapters in the edited volumes and also publishing several research articles in prestigious international journals. He is on the editorial board of several journals, including the South Asian Economic Journal, IDS Bulletin, Sussex, UK, among others. His book, The Logic of Sharing, Indian Approaches to South-South Cooperation, has been acclaimed internationally as one of the best volumes on international development cooperation. Professor Sachin Chaturvedi was also the Global Justice Fellow at Macmillan Center for International Affairs at Yale University in 2009 to 10 and has served as the visiting professor at Jawaharlal Nehru University and was a developing country fellow at University of Amsterdam, a visiting fellow at the Institute of Advanced Studies Simela, and visiting scholar at German Development Institute in 2007. Currently, Professor Chaturvedi is also independent director on the board of Reserve Bank of India. And we are very happy and elevated by the presence of Professor Chaturvedi to deliver this 57 Foundation Day lecture. Before inviting Professor Chaturvedi, I request our President, Odisha Economic Association, Professor Jagannath Lenka sir, to have an opening remark. Then we will request to Professor Chaturvedi for presentation. Professor Lenka.
So, thank you, Himanshu. So, a very good afternoon for everybody present here. So, at the outset, I would like to pay our tribute to those great visionaries who felt the need of an academic association way back in 1968. So, hats off to Professor Sadashiva Mishra, the first president of Odisha Economic Association, Professor Baidyanath Mishra, the first secretary, and other dedicated economists like Professor Devendra Chandra Mishra, Professor Vidyadhara Mishra, Professor Chakradhara Mishra, Professor Khetra Mohan Patnaik, Professor Lamlal Agrawal, and many others. And with the expert advice of the stalwarts like Prasanta Patnaik, Prabhata Patnaik, Professor Nilakantha Rath, and many others, the association has traveled a glorious journey for the last 57 years. So as per the objectives of association, we organize regular seminars, conferences, symposia, colloquy, and recently in the last executive meeting, it was felt that there shall be a discussion on international trade looking to its current situation. And promptly, a suggestion came from Professor Keshav Das regarding the speaker, and he is none other than Professor Sachin Chaturvedi, who has both theoretical and practical exposition in the fields. So we are very happy that he agreed to deliver a speech on this topic, and I welcome you on my behalf and on behalf of the association, and we are very glad to hear from you. And I must thank all the participants and also the research scholars particularly to just look to the way of his deliberation so that that will enrich the domain of your understanding in international trade as well as economic development. So thank you very much. So now I request Professor Chaturvedi to enlighten about the topic that is emerging trends in international trade in resource-based value chains, role of the states. So Professor Chaturvedi.
Thank you. Thanks a lot, respected Professor Jagannath Lenka, President of the Odisha Economic Association, a very active member, Secretary of the Association, Professor Himanshu Shekhar Raut, my very dear friend, Professor Keshav Das, all the executive members of the Odisha Economic Association, others, and my gratitude to Professor Nilkant Rath, who has, I understand, has also joined. So it's a great pleasure for me to join all of you, and I'm extremely delighted that today we are able to discuss something which is of great significance, not only in terms of how the global disruptions we are seeing, but also the discontinuation of the trade theories and practical measures that we have taken in last several years. That time has come to reject them. Time has come to re-understand international trade and economy. What is getting from our international engagements, 40 to 45% of our GDP that comes from trade at some point was 52%. It's a very important sector for our economy. The policies largely come from the central government, but key actors and stakeholders are the state governments. And that is why I thought this topic of resource base, particularly when we talk of Odisha. Odisha is the king state for our resource base, not only for the human skills, and we know it is the most important contribution that Odisha has made in terms of some of the best economists who have come from Odisha, but also in terms of the economy of the country, in terms of the resources that are coming out from Odisha. So what we are seeing at the global level with the new president in United States, a huge disruption is happening. Some are justifying it, some are negating it. The idea of free trade, which it never was, but we had this theoretical understanding of free trade. Our idea of low tariffs as a facilitator, and of often criticism that India got for high tariffs. Now you are facing something like 245% tariff, which no one had ever imagined. So we are seeing how weaponization of trade instruments are happening. But that's a big topic. And at some other point, I would certainly like to talk to all of you about this. As RIS, my research institution, is leading some of the work that government of India requires in terms of understanding imperatives of these tariffs. Today, I have thought of covering something else, which is related to this tariff disruption that we are seeing with tariffs in the trade. What is required is to focus attention on what preparedness we require at our state level. What is it that we should do, and what is it that is required to be done? So, as the tariffs are going up, as disruptions are happening, we need to put our house in order. We need to see what state industry associations, state economic associations, state governments, and other non-actors can perform and contribute in terms of strengthening the linkages that are there. I have prepared a PowerPoint in another 40 minutes or so. I would quickly go through that PowerPoint and would like to bring forward 4 points which are important. First and foremost, when we talk of international trade agreements, states play a very marginal role. We need to see how in the FTA negotiations and other dimensions we can have state on board so that trade, investment, finance, and technology, all four, are linked in terms of how we are going to get state a beneficial stakeholder in the process of India's international engagement. That's the first point I want to make. The second, resource based states have to see what kind of investment they can make across value chain for getting the advantages that they require. Why states with resources do not think of evolving value chains in terms of retaining the talent in the state and also enhancing share of their resource base in the GDP. As a result, states with a low resource base but higher investment power takes away strength of those resources in their GDP to very big notch than the states with those resources. Value addition, friends and colleagues, is extremely important. And that's my third point. You need to have skills and technology. Why is that certain districts of Odisha are having huge skills for diamond cutting and polishing, but the glamour of diamond is in some other state? And we need to see what is it that is required, not just in diamonds, but in many other critical minerals, critical resource base that are required, where skills and technology are needed. So these 4 points I would be capturing in my PowerPoint that I wish to share with you. I would also be very keen to bring in some dimensions of this engagement that would give us some bit of strength in terms of identifying the broad engagements that are needed. I have tried to connect this with the broad international trade that is happening, the trends that we are seeing, the kind of resource base that is needed, and what is it that we see states to do. And this is largely the outline of my presentation, where I would be capturing the concept of value chain, the idea of states, and then we go forward in terms of what the dimensions are. When we talk about value chains, our idea of supply chains also come in, and that's where some confusion to some people happen. But we need to see how best we can delineate the two, the regional value chains, the global value chains, and keep the supply chains away. So the flow chart that you are seeing is in terms of logistics, the flow, the materials that are moving around, but also the regional specificity of it or the global specificity of it, which is of great significance for our understanding. And that's where you largely see material sourcing or production, consumption or disposal, and even recycling of materials. So you find a whole circle moving around with the value chains and contributing at multiple stages our understanding. There are also movements like, for instance, the upstream, where initial stages of extraction are important, including exploration and production. You have midstream, where value added has just happened, but it has yet to get into finished goods. And then the downstream, where the final products are produced. Within this framework are the forward and the backward linkages. Forward linkages are domestic value added exports that a country provides to other countries, but backward linkages are largely in terms of how the value added has contributed to the export basket. And we see this emanating out of the whole investment that Japan at some point made in East Asia. And those were the days when people used to talk about comparative advantage. Countries having comparative advantage would get the flying geese, and the comparative advantage used to fly away with the geese if other economies have acquired those advantages. And that's why, friends and colleagues, we see how the hardware industry moved out from Japan, South Korea, to initially to Singapore for a while, and then to Thailand and Malaysia. How software industry moved out from Japan and parts of South Korea to India. So flying geese take away the comparative advantage that countries lose, and there are umpteen papers and literature on flying geese. So this is largely the kind of value chain fragmentation of production process that has happened, and which has given the distribution gains across value chains to different countries and states. And this, if you see, to a large extent, the global trade in minerals, if you see, that has multiplied. It has gone across, the quantums have gone up from 2.9 trillion to almost 11.5 trillion in 2023. So within a phase of 25 years, you see a huge transformation that is happening. In fact, if you see global trade, parts and components and semi-finished goods occupy almost 72% of the global trade. Within this, if you find natural resources base, they are also multiplying, and multiplying to a great extent in terms of how countries are exporting and importing. This is also because a large sum of these actors are contributing to the sunrise industries of electronics, where natural resources are being increasingly leveraged to bring in the renewable sector in focus, and also bringing in new electronic materials that are required for iPhones and many other electronic dimensions of our production structure that have been led by several multinational companies. So you find a huge traction within this. And as a result, you see lithium, cobalt, nickel, uh, they all are playing extremely important role in terms of contributing to clean energy related production at wind farms or solar panels, or even electric vehicles that are required. The dimensions for energy transition are important, and so are the investments in the sector. So you find a sort of dynamics which is emerging in terms of how the export controls, particularly led by China, are creating these supply chain disruptions, and that's where these minerals are getting more and more important. You also find that the critical minerals and their imports have multiplied, as I said, within these 20 years of 2003 to 2023 to a huge extent. And it has multiplied in terms of its share, which is going up, and the slide is showing very clearly. But it is also in terms of their relevance in the overall basket of trade that we are talking of. We also find the global value chains important in terms of supply chain concentration that is there, but also the huge price volatility that has entered in, along with growing monopolization of supply chains. And that is the reason why within the Quad, India, Japan, Australia, US, all the four have tried to overcome this price volatility and export control. So the idea of economic security, the idea of global value chain, they are getting converged. So what I said in the beginning in terms of trade, investment, technology, and finance converging as our concern, it is so much evident in this sector and in this area. And you find that the wider global trends are actually having implications in terms of socio-environmental concerns, the ecological concerns in terms of extraction, so the role that transnational corporations have to play, but also participation of actors to see what kind of advantages they can derive out of the global value chains. What component, midstream, downstream, upstream, where they are placing themselves and where they are standing. The monopolization is reflected in terms of not just owning of resources, but also in terms of capturing the processing. And this is what I meant when in my initial remarks, I was saying that if Odisha is having resource base, the requirement for processing technology, the skills that are needed are also extremely important. And investment in that direction can help in terms of localization of the value chain, both at not just at the middle stream, but also in terms of the final products that are needed and the kind of efforts that are needed to contribute. So there we find that the critical mineral startups that have come up, the way they have strengthened, they are extremely important for us to see how from upstream to midstream and midstream to downstream, this movement can happen for states to retain that comparative advantage that flying geese are all talking about. This idea of critical minerals in terms of the new venture capital funds that have come up, they are the ones in Congo or in China are determining this comparative advantage and strength in terms of monopolizing. Let me come to the second section of my talk, which is more in terms of how these critical minerals are actually helping us enter into a resource-based value chain where Indian states have to play a very, very important role. The domestic critical mineral explorations that are happening, the dimensions of engagement that are happening are extremely important in terms of identifying the priorities that Geological Survey of India has taken in, and the National Critical Mineral Mission, which is trying to bring together a greater effort in terms of handholding and also in terms of bringing in not only technology and the patents that are needed for critical mineral value chain, but also the skills and mineral processing parts. But much lies with the state governments to see how they can bring in NCMM, the National Critical Mineral Mission, and its localization within the state territories. And that's where the role of entities like Odisha Economic Association, I see a great relevance. I think, Professor Lenka, it would be absolutely important to have much more focused and dedicated discussion in terms of how Odisha can take greater advantage of NCMM. More econometric studies and economic studies are needed in terms of seeing the local ports which are coming in, the distances that are there from the mines, the nature of skills that are coming in, the nature of foreign investment that is there, and the amount of active support from entities like the Reserve Bank and others for supporting economic heft that is required for mineral processing parks. And this, I think, would be extremely important. In next few slides, I would capture the details. Let me turn to natural resources those of you who come from development economics are well aware of how this was described as curse for development, the resource curse, or even in 60s the idea of Dutch disease. From 2004-5 onwards, when the emerging markets started expanding on the current trajectory of growth after the just before the Lehman Brothers collapse, we find that the rise of China and India have helped Africa reduce the burden of Dutch disease. And we have seen how dimensions of economy have changed. There are several issues which are important in terms of elasticity and the substitutes that are there. So even if generalization of production functions is happening of mineral-based products, we find technological knowledge and advancement in natural resource sector much more important for growth and for advancement. And from that important perspective, let us see the states and what state they are in. If you look at the engagement, Gujarat, Maharashtra, Tamil Nadu, Uttar Pradesh, Karnataka, Telangana, Odisha, Kerala, and Jharkhand are some of the leading states with trade as a huge driver. And we find that exports, particularly of these industrialized states of Gujarat, Maharashtra, Tamil Nadu, Karnataka, you find they share huge in terms of what kind of transition they are ready to play for metals and minerals in terms of moving up the value chains. And you find that they have largely seen the years that are there, but also in terms of the dimensions of engagement that they have talked about. I have also tried to see how the concentration of minerals are. And as I said, Odisha is the king. The huge concentration that we see across Rajasthan, Chhattisgarh, Karnataka, and Jharkhand as well, they are pretty close to each other and have several commonalities that are there in terms of their resource base. And this is, I think, is extremely important in terms of chromite and bauxite, which is huge strength of Odisha in terms of this value chain that is there. If you look at traditionally, Odisha has played an important role from upstream and to some limited extent in midstream. And I think this is important for us to see how upstream movement on bauxite, iron, or manganese, or chrome, or graphite has to go forward. We need to see midstream segments, certain products like iron and steel or aluminium, ferrochrome, sponge iron, etc., ferromanganese, that is also important. And you see the table in which we have talked about added dimensions of it. So if Odisha from upstream, midstream has to go up in the downstream, the products like chemicals, textiles, cement, wood, pulp and machinery, they require greater effort in terms of bringing in all the three streams up in Odisha. But necessary investments are they in other states, and as a result, Odisha has remained confined to upstream and to a limited extent in midstream, but missing further up in the value chain. And that part, I think, would be important, not just from state economy perspective, GSDP perspective, but also in terms of international trade, because the way ports are coming up in Odisha, there is huge potential for investments to multiply, fructify, and reduce transaction costs if exports can also happen from Odisha. And this, I think, would be important for us to see how some of these products can be taken forward by Odisha in terms of the export sector of the natural resources. The downstream sectors, iron and steel and aluminium, more products can be expected. More finished and final products may come up. And that would give a huge impetus to the GSDP growth in Odisha. And that, I think, is a dimension that would be of greater significance, even from the role that Odisha economy has to play in the days to come. If you see the mineral base, I have just tried to put that under a quick sort of review. And again, you see the lion's share of Odisha in terms of mineral production in 24-25. So this I have taken from the annual report of the Ministry of Mines, from where this dimension has come up, and the graph is so beautifully plotted by my colleague Arslan in terms of bringing out the relative importance of other states. Rajasthan is there, but still much lesser than what Odisha has. But you do not see the GSDP differences across these states, and that's where a major challenge for Odisha is. I also would like to mention here that the ruby and many other dimensions, particularly the chromite in Sukinda and Nausahi, the places where value additions can happen. Are there possibilities of MSMEs coming up closer to these mines? Can we really think of a new industrial plan where more of these medium to small enterprises come in for value addition to take Odisha to the downstream, and that downstream probably would be of greater significance in terms of even iron ore based products, and that part we would have to see how that can be best covered. It is also important that the resource curse hypothesis is analyzed more and compared with Jharkhand and Chhattisgarh, where similar challenges are lying. And we find that these complementarities exist across these states where much bigger dimensions can be sort of found out. So the issue is what can be done. In my view, state and state governments can play four roles very distinctly: role as a facilitator, as a regulator, as a producer, and as a buyer. The idea of and the concept of bringing in greater fiscal and trade policy specific incentives. Very few states have their own trade policy because that burden is left on the central government. I presume that Odisha should set up an independent department for international trade, given the fact that in last 10 years, huge investments have been made on private and government-owned ports to come up. And as a result, the idea of not exporting directly from Odisha is no more there. We have possibilities. More subsidies, more industry processing zones to come up, and facilitating GPNs, the global production networks. How Odisha exports can become part of the global production networks. What are the ways we can see global and national and local challenges to come up there? The idea of regulator, particularly in terms of state marketing boards and restrictions that are needed. Tariffs and quotas I have spoken about, but largely in terms of quality control that one can see in terms of regulations. And there are state-owned enterprises which are already active in Odisha, but we need to see how more active private spaces may be generated, and that's where the role of buyers would also come in. In terms of specific illustrations, there are several global illustrations, several studies where resource-based countries, smaller provinces, have multiplied their energies. And today I have picked up a case of Malaysia, where palm oil was not allowed to prosper because most of the European companies were owning palm oil cultivations in Malaysia. And they were not keen to evolve a horizontal specialization for value chain multiplication. As a result, new products were not allowed to come in. When Malaysian government intervened and allowed them to be owned by local people, they started looking into domestic market, trying to see technical expertise and overcoming the often cited challenge of long transportation time. And very soon you find that the government of Malaysia took measures for accumulating productive capabilities. And there are multiple ways one can define productive capabilities. I talked about generalized production functions, but we can see what productive capabilities we can think of and give fiscal and trade measures that are needed. And that's where resource rich states would have to be research rich as well. More concentration on research is required. State governments would have to see what kind of push they need to give to research. Fortunately, Odisha is becoming a leading education sector. More and more academic institutions are there. And Professor Keshav Das, your own university, is a very clear example of how private sector can really turn around the education sector in such a creative and constructive manner. During the Indian Economic Association's meeting and also Indian Science Congress meeting, I had an opportunity of participating in your conference center, joining there the campus, beautiful campus, 2007-8 I saw. But over the years, it has come up even bigger and better. And we find that in this case of palm oil, the horizontal multiplication of the value chain gave new products of oleochemicals and biodiesel to Malaysia, which have multiplied the export potential of Malaysia. And you find them that they are part of the value chain. You also see the role of state and other stakeholders, which is equally important in terms of achieving self-sufficiency in mineral production, doing the designing and value addition, and also bringing in economic growth and adequately addressing environmental concerns. This is also at this point confined to PSUs, but private spaces would bring in greater dimensions for this. The role of learning and monitoring would be important. State-owned enterprises can do that, but community-led enterprises can also do that fairly well. I also see that now, as I enter into closing of my talk, there are dimensions that are important. We need to see the uneven distribution and the gains that are happening with this across the states and also at the enterprise level. The volatility and value addition would help us reduce vulnerability by bringing in value-added products with technological and knowledge solutions. We can bring in greater prediction in our earnings based on natural resources, because we would not remain confined to natural resources alone. Of course, ecological connects are important for states to see, but the dimensions of engagement, and I in the beginning gave example of diamonds, Orissa and Gujarat, and the ports and logistics dimensions that are important. Also trying to see how the critical mineral elements are equally important in terms of value chains that are there. More efforts by different states in agriculture value chain. You look at Punjab, very little investment was made in agriculture. Now Madhya Pradesh has left Punjab and Haryana behind in agriculture production. But Madhya Pradesh would have to do the value addition. More investments are required in Madhya Pradesh to do the value addition in agriculture. Otherwise, this comparative advantage would not remain what they have taken over from Punjab and Haryana. And this is important for us to appreciate in the nature-based economies that are there, the resource-based economies that are there. With this, I stop and thank you for your attention. It gives me great pleasure once again to have talked about issues which are of greater significance for states which are based on natural resources. I stop here. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, sir, for your well researched and fully communicating the real how the state will improve their use their technology and skill, and how they will go for resource reach to research reach uh, uh, to exploit to get the benefit of the export sector or import sector. Now we will open for discussion, and would you first ask Balakrishna? Have some question? Balakrishna Padi. Balakrishna?
Hello, sir.
Yes, yes, please.
Hello.
Please continue.
So actually, there is some network problem here. Hello.
Yes, yes, continue.
You are audible. Continue.
As sir, I have already put it in the chat box. Actually, there's some network error here, though, sir. Sorry.
Okay. Let me tell you the question he has put.
He has muted. Balakrishna has muted, so you can switch over to somebody else.
No, sir. He was asking about that how this environmental factor. Just let me read his question. What are the environmental consequences of Odisha's mining-driven global value chain participation?
Yeah, I can see that Professor Himanshu in the chat box. There are some three questions that I'm seeing four
Yeah.
now. So maybe we can take them one by one, and I can respond. Do you want the members to read out their questions? We can do that, and then I can respond to all the four questions in one go.
Yeah, sir. Ansuman?
Namaskar to one and all present. Professor Chaturvedi, very nice lecture, very informative and enlightening. I happen to be from the Indian Economic Service, and I have had the opportunity to go to RIS and experience the very vibrant and rich ecosystem of research that RIS contributes to the discipline. And I'm very happy to be interacting with you here, sir. I've already put my question on the chat, but briefly, my question is that just like we have a smile curve in the manufacturing sector where there's a very high level of value addition at the beginning where we do R&D or innovation, then the value addition comes down a little bit at the time of manufacturing, and then zooms up again at the time of post-manufacturing phase. Do we have a similar kind of characterization or value addition in the three phases of mineral and metal extraction that you talked about? And a corollary to this question is that what the basic question which I wanted to pose to you is, which is the phase in which large numbers of good quality jobs can be created? Because to my mind, and I think you also hinted at this subject in your lecture, that is where Odisha really wants to hit the bullseye to create very large number of very good quality jobs. So these are the two questions. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Mejabin? Mejabin?
Hello, I'm audible.
Yes, please. Yes.
Good afternoon, everyone. I am Azavin Fidos, PhD scholar from Utkal University. Thank you, sir, for your insightful presentation. So my question is, how can states use trade policy to mitigate the risk of income volatility for farmers, especially in the context of fluctuating global commodity prices and supply chain disruptions? Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Any other question? Please unmute and you can tell participants.
I think Dr. Amrendra Das has a question.
Yes. Yes, good afternoon, sir, and good afternoon, everyone. No, in fact, I liked your presentation very much because it had a lot of discussion on Odisha, and you have thoroughly analyzed the strengths of Odisha. And so my question is, like some time ago, I had read an article in Hindu that say Gujarat actually is like the export hub for say petroleum products, and it adds a lot of value, and it exports even to Europe and America to a lot of value added products. So, but in case of Odisha, we have a lot of minerals, and we export either say the ore or the base metal, as you have already pointed out in the table. So I am also trying to understand like why Odisha is not able to add much value. What are the constraints? And of course, you are giving the example of Malaysia, but then I was thinking since we have a case of Gujarat, and so what Gujarat has done and what Odisha can learn from Gujarat to add more value to the existing metals. And of course, I see the threat that because of the CBAM, Odisha's export may be also affected because we know as per carbon border adjustment policy of Europe, if we do not convert our metals into say green metals like green steel or green aluminum, then our exports may be also affected in the future. So then how do we add more value to it? So you may throw some lights what Odisha can learn from Gujarat. Thank you so much.
So should we begin now, and then take up, because questions are pouring in the chat box I'm seeing.
Yes, sir,
So
please. Yeah. Yeah.
so at this point, I think whatever we have already discussed, let us
Yes, yes, sir.
take
Yes,
them
sir.
forward. There are some general comments, so I think that is perfectly fine. We heard Dr. Balkrishna Padi, who could not speak much, but he has put his question here, that what are the environmental consequences? I think the point that Dr. Amrendra Das mentioned and what Dr. Padi mentioned, I think are similar in terms of cross-border carbon mechanisms that are needed, and what are the environmental or ecological consequences. Both are extremely important, should be factored in. And as I said, and it also brings me closer to the point that Dr. Anshuman was making in terms of how and at what stage high-level jobs would come in. I think high-level jobs required to be generated a priori upfront in terms of addressing the low carbon footprint of the extraction process. The challenge here is that we have to make multiple initiatives, and this, I think, is the question that again came in form of what is it that we can learn from Gujarat? What are the ways we can understand from Gujarat what is needed, as Dr. Amrinder Das asked. Since I'm on the board of the Reserve Bank, I very closely watch state level instruments that have been generated to make the credit available. Till 2013, you find that 6 states of southern India had 80% of the total credit created in the country and 69% share in the total deposits. But in last 10 years, situation has changed. The share in total credit creation in the country of these southern 6 states, it has come down from 80%. It has come down to 64%, which means other states have also started expanding. You also find that several special purpose vehicles for financing industrialization has happened in Gujarat for many decades now. People have capital available at a cost which is affordable by industry. So we need to see how, and since you come from Indian Economic Service, you would appreciate it much better. We need to create SPVs to see how industrialization is financed at a low cost. The trouble with, and I do not prefer to use the word Bimaru, but unfortunately, we need to see of some acronym to describe these states. We need to see how in these states we create such SPPs. During my tenure as Deputy Chairman of the Niti Aayog of Madhya Pradesh, I tried to create such an SPP to see how we can reduce the cost of accessing capital. Until unless capital is available, industrial houses would remain constrained, and as a result, they would remain confined uh, um, uh, answering to the question in terms of where we go on the supply curve, the supply chain would be very difficult for local industry because they would remain only at a level where their resources permit, and that is only upstream. So as a result, they would just do the extraction, supply it to the entity, and go forward. And that's where the question that Mahajabin has asked: what should be the trade policy? Trade policy should be to enable our industries to go to midstream or downstream, and that's where I see Odisha and Gujarat's difference. What are the ways we can enable our enterprises to go to downstream, to do value addition? And she was also asking, how do we reduce vulnerability? By value addition. By value addition, you can reduce the vulnerability, do the product differentiation that is needed in terms of the greater market appeal. With the new ports, it would be easier. Now I come back to Dr. Amrinder Das' question. In the smile curve, where do we see high skill jobs? Right at the top, where the value addition is to be done by the scientists, by the subject experts, whether in mineral-based small enterprises or the dimensions that are needed by automobile industry and by others where value addition is being done in Gujarat. So some effort can be done in terms of what small products can be done, even if by micro or small or medium enterprises, that should be feasible. And we need to find out those windows. It is the role of the researchers, policymakers to come together to encourage industries and see in what dimension they can really address. I also see a couple of more entries that have come in by Dr. Sahu, where he says how Odisha could get the benefit of IT. Definitely. This is convergence, as I said, trade, investment, technology, and finance, all four have to come together. So finance, I have already told you, technology is an important dimension. It's not just the extraction technology, but IT-based solutions that are extremely important. And I have already highlighted, as you are suggesting, MSME. I also see a question by Jhulan Barik, which says how we can leverage the strategic location. Yes, that's the crux. Odisha probably is the best located, best endowed state with human resources outside Odisha. Keshav Das has also returned to Odisha only now. People like him should come back to Odisha to add value addition to this whole process. We need to see how the skills and dimensions of engagement are there. And the Bali Jatra, we know it's celebrated, but was part of the Odisha culture for long, and for the heft that it provided to the economic connect of it. Then I see from Kamala Das about can adopting a circular economy. Absolutely right. The idea of cross-border carbon mechanisms would need circularity in mineral sector. And there are umpteen ways several countries in Latin America, including Brazil, are adopting for ensuring this. And I think we can learn about it. IRIA, which is based in Jakarta, has issued 2 papers in terms of how metal and mineral industries can bring in. I also see a comment by Professor Kanaya Ahuja who is director of DABB. He says one general question: where do we stand today? A couple of years back, it was taught to us that globalization is the key to international trade and investment, whereas today the world is talking about globalization and imposition of high tariffs. What's the future? Yes, global trade is going through some patchy historical impasse, which we are seeing, but I'm sure it would overcome. That's the only way the economy and the global system would survive, because of huge interdependence. But this is also a time where our states can see how we can do the value addition and leverage this impasse that is there at the global level to prepare ourselves better. I think
I
I have
think
tried to cover all the questions that are there.
Gayatri,
Himanshu ji.
Gayatri is a question: how to link environmental cost and sustainability related to this topic?
Yes, I covered that. I
Okay.
said that efforts both for circular economy, effort for the carbon footprint, and also the cross-border mechanisms that are coming in, they would have to be brought in with new technology and with new mechanisms that would reduce the overall cost of it.
Professor Keshav Das, sir, anything?
No. I think it's very. I mean, when we have Professor Sachin Chaturvedi, so that itself is, I think, it's a big bonus for us. But I think I'm personally very very enlightened to hear from him so much ideas about Odisha. But I also just one or two small points. One relates to the whole question of infrastructure. I think certain kinds of critical business-centric infrastructure, like who is going to fund that? And one is you have the resources. I mean, we always had those resources, but then as we all know that these have been essentially sort of based on kind of an extractive perspective by which some private capital would simply extract or sort of do the primary processing here, and then very little value addition is happening. So I was wondering, infrastructure investment and who will be financing that. The second little point is about which also you did mention, and some questions also came in, that relates to this new energy that I'm talking about, green energy, for instance, like green hydrogen, which is a big talk now. But then sort of, are we ready for that? Again, who will be investing in that, whether the state or the private capital? So those are the issues. And one last thing is, because you also mentioned about MSMEs, so there is this new, not very new, but then this is a kind of a idea which is sort of circulating, that is the internationalization of industrial clusters. So in that, like several sort of locally based clusters, whether in the traditional or in the modern domains, whether they could be sort of linked with certain kinds of resources, whether it's in terms of services, in terms of markets, in terms of similar clusters elsewhere in the globe, so that the benefit will be much higher. So I think all that will also lead to creating more jobs. But I think the initial investments in some of this critical sector is what I'm worried about. Thank you.
No, thank you. Thanks, Professor Keshav Das. I think this is extremely important. There are fortunately new institutional mechanisms that have been created to finance both infrastructure and long-term commitment for renewable energy. Some of the partnerships from foreign countries are also possible, as you have rightly mentioned. I was in a meeting some time back where our ambassador from Germany was mentioning about willingness of any state to invest in a port where refueling with green hydrogen is possible. Why Odisha cannot take a lead? We have already created NAPFID. NAPFID has a huge window for investment, which would take care of infrastructure, but would also take care of the way renewable energy investments are to be done. So from both perspectives, we have possibility of enriching the capacities at the state level to see that we meet not only the domestic demand, but also the demand that is there. If you recall, At some point, there was a proposal to do the CNG processing that was required to be taken out from Mozambique, brought in the liquefied gas and turned into gas in Odisha. This CNG terminus that has come in can also host the green hydrogen. And if Galathea Bay comes up as a bay that we are looking at, the new options that we are looking at, other island ports, no need to discuss details here, but these dimensions are the future strategic vision. There was a question on the strategic location of Odisha, and we should not undermine that. It's a huge advantage for Odisha to take that forward.
Mr. Sarangi,
good
Sudhita
afternoon.
Sarangi from Virginia Tech. Professor Sarangi, yes, please.
Hello.
I have
Dr.
put a
SK
question in
Sahu.
the chat. So I can just put it out again. So,
Yeah, please.
if we lack a unified policy, we may have to worry about competition between states and within states. And these are fledgling industries, especially MSMEs. So, do we have to worry about this kind of thing, or is it not something we should worry about?
Professor Sarangi, I think this would remain there, and I think we should worry about, but only to the extent that we are cautious, coherent, and consistent. That I think would be extremely important for the state government to ensure. And that's where, as I said in the beginning, a role of organizations like this are extremely important in pushing economic growth. Economists should be concerned about it, and I'm very glad that there are people who are thinking in terms of inter, and global competition about carbon footprints and also about renewable sources. This is something that is required for a state which is on the upward path, and that probably would be important. The question that you have posed to me boils down at two levels. One, expertise and resources. To what extent expertise and skills are there to overcome intra and inter competition? And second, to what extent resources are available? Resources not just available in form of quantum, but also in terms of cost effectiveness. And this, I said, are the efforts that's where the counter long-term guarantee by the state would be of extremely important. Some of our states have not paid enough attention on financial institutions to come up. The state finance commissions, most of the states are in a very bad situation. And as a result, we need new mechanisms to come up to consolidate financing, which is available to our entrepreneurs. And we create a culture in which these entrepreneurs are able to leverage, but also state hand-holding would be important. And that probably roadmap would be extremely important for us to go forward. So we
Thank
stop
you,
now.
sir. I think. Okay, who is there raising hand? Please, sir. Very quickly, your question, and last question is from Dr. Swambrava Mishra has already written in the chat, but this two question last. Yes, please, sir.
Myself, Dr. SK Sahu. I am from the Ministry of MSME, Government of India. I am happy to note that this webinar, actually, I got the information, one of my friend, though I am the live member in Odisha Economic Association, but I am posted at New Delhi, but I am not getting any information about this seminar and all these things. Since I am working in MSME sector and a lot of deliberation has been made for MSMEs and other things, and this is international trade resource based value chain system, I would like to suggest that there are a number of policies and programs on behalf of Government of India for promotion and development of MSME sector in the entire country, including Odisha. And we know very well that Odisha is a very rich resource-based state, but we could not capitalize the resources for promoting, for international trade, for identifying the products for identifying the markets and what would be the tariff concession, tariff liberalization from the importing country as well as from the exporting country. Since Sri Keshav Das has suggested about the cluster activities, we are having the Government of India mandate for cluster development for small scale industries. And definitely we are having a number of clusters in the state of Odisha, but for small clusters and for big clusters. For Government of India is providing a lot of incentive.
Could you please
So
your question, please?
my question is that whether we can leverage the government policies and programs by identifying the clusters and any tariff, any products for promoting of our products in the international and for restriction of imports from the outside.
Okay.
If yes, what are these products or sectors to be identified for the interest of the state?
Okay.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Dr. Swayamprabha Mishra, madam. Swayamprabha, madam.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Yes.
Sir, I already mentioned it in the chat. I think, yeah, I just wanted to ask about the amount of massive gold reserves which have been found in Odisha. I mean, what could be the price discovery challenges that the state is going to face, and what can the government do about it? Thank you.
Please, sir. These are two last.
I don't have much details about this gold reserve, so I think I would just let it pass. But thanks, Professor Himanshu, for giving this opportunity. I'm extremely happy and thankful to everyone for their very active participation and very good response to the points that have come up in our discussion. So thanks, Professor Lenka, and thanks, Professor Das. Thank you.
I think the last Professor Lenka, sir, just conclude it.
So thank you, Professor Chaturvedi, for illuminating deliver of this lecture on this resource-based value chains, and particularly integrating the local resource economies into the global economy. And you have already discussed the factors that the disrupting factors and wage out. So I think it is quite exhaustive based on facts and figures, and a lot of research inputs are there. So we are very glad, and also we think that it is helpful to all the listeners, particularly the students, the faculty members, the researchers, and our executive members, and particularly the focus on Odisha, because Odisha things are a bit complex, because what we feel that because it is a resource-rich state, but looking to the level of its income, it is perhaps in the lower rung of the ladder, just above Bihar. Now things are improving, but it is not up to expectation, as you told that. So because Odisha is expecting all its technocrats, the educationists, to come back and take charge of that, because Odisha has no dearth of its manpower, skilled manpower also, but they are all migrated to other states, and I hope that if they will come back, then things may start changing. Now government is taking a lot of steps for that, and we hope, because Odisha is one of the emerging states, we hope that in future days the Odisha will prosper and will come to the mainstream. And thank you very much for a very beautiful and very educating paper. And I must request our secretary to enroll Dr. Sahu in the group, so that he will get all the informations from us. And thank you very much. And now I request our assistant secretary to just offer a formal vote of thanks. Now, Dr. Mishra. Lipsha ma'am.
Am I audible, sir?
Yes, yes.
Yes.
Thank you very much, sir. And good evening and namaskar to everybody. It has indeed been an extremely thought-provoking and informative session by Professor Chaturvedi. We are privileged to have you, sir, amongst us, one of the most enlightened, well-traveled policymaker and economist of the country. Thank you very much, sir. On behalf of Odisha Economic Association, this 57th Foundation Day celebration has been absolutely perfect with your lecture and your deliberation. I thank Professor Jagannath Lenka, sir, the president of our association, for his encouragement and organizing this wonderful talk in this Sunday afternoon. Thank you so much, sir. I thank Professor Kesab Das, sir, for being the torchbearer of Odisha Economic Association once again. And sir, thank you very much for being here with us during each and every conference and seminar and discussions and taking our association to a higher level. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you, Himanshu, sir, for organizing and the logistics. And thank you, the participants, faculty members, students, research scholars, and others who have come forth with wonderful, pertinent questions. And we go back with a lot of thought and a lot of things to do. Like sir has just mentioned, Chaturvedi sir has told about we are resource rich, but research deficient. So as teachers, as faculty members, I think we are the important connectors between the society, students, where we can tell them about research and at the same time help in skilling and improving the technology. So we go back with a lot of thought, lot of trials that we need to do in the years to come. Thank you so much, sir. We need to hear you again, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.